this isn't just something that I do for giggles.
Right.
This is not, I'm staking my eternity on this. This is not something that I do for fun because I really like hanging out with you guys, which I do like hanging out.
Yeah.
But this is not, you think this is a game?
Yeah.
It's not a game.
And I think it certainly all comes back to that depth of personal relationship. You were talking about prayer booth as well, and I've often wondered, because we have had people come up and ask, oh, so what church are you with? What do you all believe? What do you think about this, that, or the other thing? Especially while Jet Fest was rolling around and we had some contentions there, people asking, are y'all the real Christians, as opposed to this guy over here. I just couldn't answer that in 2 seconds, right? Because it would be prideful.
In the 2 seconds it would take for them to finish the brownie.
Exactly. It'd be prideful to say yes. It'd be prideful to say no. Or, inaccurate to say no, But people, I think people who are curious, strangely, aren't patient enough to have a conversation. They're curious enough to get a surface level answer, but they aren't quite curious enough to have a sit down talk for coffee about Jesus, which is what it takes.
But
right.
Just because you're not that person to sit down and have coffee with them, there's been times with my dad's ministry where he talks to someone and then a few years later they come back because their life was going great and now it's going bad. And they remember that conversation where you, like, let's say if they were talking to me where I said, yeah, I had this really horrible time in my life, but I came back from it. God helped me to come back from it. And they remember that you said that, and then it's like planting seeds.
Yeah, it is.
And if they grow, they grow, and if they don't, you did your job.
Yeah.
Your job was just to sow seeds, not even to do the planting.
Right.
And it's really not that you should take that job lightly. It's the most important job. Well, I think they're all equally important, actually. But
yeah, well, through every other vocation, you pursue the Great Commission, which is kind of
yeah. I caution people to not focus too much on themselves, because I do that where I'm like, man, I should have said this or that. Why didn't I think of this verse?
Right.
Why didn't I say this thing? And it's not your job to know all of the nuts and bolts of what's going on in their head, because that's God's job. You were just supposed to say something.
Well, and here's something I've thought about recently, and maybe only done once or twice, but I can't believe I never thought about it before, where you have those moments of, after the conversation, you're thinking, oh, I could have said this or I could have said that. You have a phone. Get their number. You can text them. You can continue the conversation.
Right.
You can invite them to coffee, and it is that extra step that might be a little abrasive. It is certainly risky in terms of, is this person going to talk to me again? Does this person have a curiosity to learn more about Christ?
Or am I kind of barging in where I'm not welcome?
And the way you described it earlier, where you're planting seeds, that's exactly how Christ describes it over and over again. If there's one consistent thing we know historically about Jesus, it's that he talked about seeds.
Well, what else were the people supposed to understand?
Right, but remember what the seed is in the parable. It's always the word. And so when I said earlier, you want to identify with Scripture, certainly, and say this is what Christians believe, but point back to the Bible and what it says. And that doesn't mean, again, that you have to know it backwards and forwards, but have a couple of things, the foundations as we see them, about who Christ is and what he's done, being able to articulate those reasonably quick, which takes practice and repetition.
Right, and that's what people don't get what I didn't get, to be more accurate. When you have that moment where you're like, crud, why didn't I say this? Write it down so that next time you don't forget, because you don't get better unless you screw up a few times. That's how cooking works. People are like, I'm a bad cook. I'm like, of course you are. Everyone starts off as a bad cook.
Yeah.
Everyone starts off bad at sewing. Everyone starts off bad at soccer. Well, some people are actually really good at soccer when they start, and it's kind of infuriating. But most ministry, you don't start off able to move entire audiences with the words that the Spirit inspired. It takes practice. Even the Apostle Paul said, I'm not the best public speaker, or I'm not the best this. You don't have to be the best.
Yeah.
God literally uses dead people all the time. So you don't even need to be alive.